The county fair had always been the biggest attraction this summer in that small American town. Strings of lights glowed along the wooden poles, casting a warm shine over families wandering between food stalls. The smell of buttered popcorn and fried dough floated through the air, mixing with the sound of carnival rides creaking and country music drifting from loudspeakers. Children ran past with cotton candy bigger than their faces, while teenagers tried their luck at ring toss games. It was a tradition that brought the entire community together, year after year, in celebration of simple joy. Among the many booths, one stood out for its bold challenge. A sign painted in red letters declared, "Test your aim, win a prize." Beneath it, rifles rested in neat rows. The booth had a reputation. It wasn't just about stuffed animals or trinkets. It was about courage. The game master, a broad man with a booming voice, would always find a way to raise the stakes, daring participants to try something more thrilling than the average shot. Tonight, his challenge carried an edge of danger. Emily, a young woman from the town, had volunteered to stand as part of the show. Her calm green eyes betrayed little of the nerves she felt as she balanced an apple carefully on her head. She was steady, her back straight, her chin lifted. The crowd admired her bravery, though many whispered about the recklessness of it. Still, the booth had done this before, and the locals trusted the game master's sense of drama. Laughter rippled through the gathering, mixed with tension that made the air feel electric. "Shoot the apple off her head and she's yours," the game master teased, raising his arms dramatically. The words echoed across the booth, making some chuckle and others shake their heads. It was meant as a joke, nothing more than carnival banter to entertain the crowd. But as the sentence hung in the air, there was an unspoken weight to it. Everyone turned to see who would dare take the challenge. After all, it wasn't just about marksmanship. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to take a risk in front of dozens of watchful eyes. That was when Daniel stepped forward. He wasn't from the town. His face was unfamiliar, his stance confident but not cocky. He had the look of someone who didn't quite belong to the noise and small talk of the fair. His clothes were simple, worn from travel, and his dark eyes carried a seriousness that contrasted with the easy laughter around him. The game master eyed him curiously, then handed him one of the rifles. As Daniel wrapped his fingers around the wood, the chatter in the crowd softened into silence. Emily noticed him too. She had never seen him before, yet something about his presence felt different. He didn't treat the moment like a joke, nor did he smirk like the others who had played earlier. Instead, he studied her face, the set of her shoulders, and the faint tremor in her hands that she tried to hide. For a fleeting moment, Emily wondered if she should have backed out. But there she stood, chin lifted, apple steady, waiting for the stranger's decision. The crowd leaned in, some whispering bets, others holding their breath. Mothers clutched their children's hands tighter, while older men folded their arms, curious to see how this would unfold. The fairground lights flickered across Daniel's profile, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw as he raised a rifle. He inhaled slowly, adjusting his stance, his gaze fixed ahead. But he wasn't looking at the apple, not entirely. His eyes lingered on Emily's face, on the bravery masked behind her steady posture. In that instant, Daniel felt a shift within himself. The challenge wasn't simply about shooting a piece of fruit balanced on someone's head. It wasn't about winning applause, proving himself, or claiming some playful reward. It was about her, this woman standing unflinching, trusting a stranger with something as fragile as her safety. Her eyes, green and bright even under the fair's artificial lights, seemed to speak 1,000 unspoken words. Nervous but strong, fragile but courageous. It stirred something in him that went beyond the thrill of the game. The rifle was heavy in his hands, though he held it with ease. Years of practice had made him steady, but this was no ordinary target. A wrong move, a slight hesitation, could turn the fair's laughter into tragedy. He tightened his grip, feeling the crowd's expectation pressing down on him like a weight. Yet, even as the world seemed to hold its breath, Daniel's focus remained on Emily. He didn't know her name, her story, or why she had volunteered. But he knew one thing. He couldn't treat this like the others had. Not when it was her. Emily felt the intensity of his gaze, and it unsettled her more than the barrel of the rifle pointed in her direction. The other men had looked past her, seeing only the apple. But this stranger looked through her, into her, as though he was trying to understand something more than a challenge. Her heart pounded, though her face stayed calm. She wondered if he would miss, if she would become nothing more than a tragic accident in a carnival game gone wrong. Yet at the same time, a strange trust bloomed quietly within her. She believed he wouldn't harm her. The fairground, usually filled with music and chatter, now felt eerily still. The game master rubbed his hands together, thrilled by the suspense he had created. The crowd pressed closer, eyes wide, breaths caught in their throats. Daniel shifted his stance one final time, the rifle steady, his finger brushing against the trigger. But inside, a storm of thoughts swirled. He had no interest in applause. He had no desire to claim Emily like a prize. Instead, he wanted to protect her, even from the danger of the very challenge he had agreed to. And as he prepared to take the shot, something inside him whispered that this moment would change everything. Daniel raised the rifle, but his heartbeat echoed louder than the carnival's music. The world around him blurred into a haze of lights and murmurs. All that mattered was a fragile figure standing before him with an apple balanced above her head. The rules were simple: knock the apple down, claim respect, maybe even win Emily. But Daniel wasn't a man who played for trophies or for crowds. He steadied his breathing, not for glory, but for her safety. Winning didn't matter, not if it meant risking harm to someone whose quiet strength had already stirred something in him. Emily's lips curved into a faint, nervous smile, as though she trusted him without needing proof. It was that trust that shook Daniel more than the shot itself. She stood tall, her chin lifted, her eyes fixed on him with an unspoken challenge. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for spectacle, their excitement buzzing in the air. Daniel's hands were steady, but inside, his heart fought against the weight of the moment. He wasn't thinking of accuracy or reputation. He was thinking of her pulse, her breath, her life. Things that meant far more than applause. The tension tightened like a rope stretched to its breaking point. Daniel exhaled and adjusted his aim, his decision already made. Instead of centering the barrel on the apple directly, he shifted it just slightly. The crowd gasped when he pulled the trigger. A sharp crack split the air, and the apple tumbled cleanly to the ground, untouched by Emily's hair or face. The bullet had flown true, but not dangerously true. The shot was perfect, not because of its precision, but because of the choice it carried. The choice to protect rather than perform. Cheers erupted like fireworks, breaking the silence that had gripped the fair. The crowd clapped, shouted, whistled, their thrill satisfied. To them, it was a dazzling moment, a spectacle worth remembering. The game master raised his arms in triumph, already spinning the shot into a story he could retell to future crowds. But Daniel wasn't watching him, nor listening to the celebration. His eyes locked on Emily as she stepped down from the platform, moving toward him with a quiet grace that cut through the noise. She wasn't clapping or laughing. She was simply watching him, reading him. As she brushed past the booth, her voice was low enough that only he could hear. "You didn't just shoot an apple," she whispered, her words calm but charged with meaning. "You chose me." Daniel froze, her sentence ringing louder than the rifle's crack. For her, the game had become something else entirely, a test of care rather than courage. In that instant, the carnival blurred. The sounds of laughter, the bright lights, the food stalls, all of it faded into the background. What remained was her, standing close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. Daniel lowered the rifle, handing it back to the game master, though his focus never left Emily. He wasn't sure what to say. He hadn't planned on being part of the spectacle, hadn't expected the challenge to mean anything beyond a fleeting moment. Yet here she was, looking at him with a trust that felt heavier than the weapon he'd just held. The weight of her words pressed into him. He had chosen her, even if he hadn't fully realized it until now. That choice meant more than any prize the carnival could offer. Emily stood silently for a moment, her breath steady despite the adrenaline still pulsing through her veins. The crowd was already moving on, distracted by the next game or the smell of funnel cakes drifting through the air. But she lingered, her presence tethering Daniel to the moment. She didn't need applause or confirmation. What she wanted: perhaps even more than she realized, was to understand why the stranger had shifted the shot when